Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber. President Trump's tariff slump continues to rattle markets. We've seen dives and volatility rivaling the last two big crashes over COVID and the housing bubble. Trump now clashing with the Fed chair, who gave him low grades for the tariff problems that Trump caused. And now there's a more stark comparison to America's Great Depression itself. The long lines, the run on the banks, that crash upended the economy and our society for years, driven by several factors, including failed tariffs. Now, if these visuals tonight seem almost too extreme to compare to the risks posed by the current market chaos, if the comparison of the food lines seems almost unfair to this administration, that comparison is based on monthly market data. This isn't like politics where words or comparisons are just sort of thrown about. After Trump's tariff debacle, the Dow is now actually headed for one of its worst monthly comparisons since 1932. It's just a mathematical comparison. As the headlines are putting it today, Dow headed for worst April since 1932, investors sending no confidence signal, a signal against Trump's policies and handling of the volatility he caused with what has been a failing trade war so far. Those mathematically driven headlines appear in many places, including the Wall Street Journal, which is, of course, the sister outlet to Fox News, owned by Rupert Murdoch. So whatever you think of the Depression comparison month by month, the bottom line is that's how the Wall Street Journal puts the headline. No one can accuse them or their owner, Murdoch, memory played in the show Succession, as some kind of anti-capitalist or anti-Republican political figure, or really sentimental in general. So our lead here is not that we are definitely heading for the Great Depression itself. We all hope not, and I'll return to that word hope. But our top story is that even the Journal and these bankers and the data itself and a lot of other indicators show this is the fallout now from Trump's losing trade gamble. And today we got even more flashing red signals for the economy.
It's the worst start to a year ever, and easily the worst start to a new presidential term.
At 63 trading days since Inauguration Day, the S&P 500 has fallen by 14%, which is the worst start to a presidential term in the index's history, dating back to 1928.
This morning, another flashing red warning light. The IMF's chief economist now projecting a 40% chance of a recession due to President Trump's tariffs.
The president is looking for a scapegoat. As it appears more and more likely that the economy is headed for a downturn, he seems to have found that scapegoat in Jay Powell.
How are we doing with tariffs? He keeps saying we're making so much money with tariffs. Okay, Mr. President, how much is so much? Give the markets something to chew on. Right now, the market's listless, it's worried, and it doesn't have anything to chew on.
Well, the markets have been chewing, but mostly chewing on a bunch of discouraging signs from the Trump White House as the president improvises those trade rules and the tariff numbers for different countries, then rolled them back, then made new threats, all of it adding uncertainty to the markets and undercutting the basic trust in the U.S. government's policy consistency and its literal global credit. Any buzz over Trump's inauguration did fade quickly, we can now see in the markets. Stocks down, prices up, tons of volatility and risk. You could take the Dow. Since inauguration, the index fell by a sizable 11% and then is up today. As we approach 100 days, Trump is not just doing worse than the president he replaced. After debates and a campaign that often fixated on post-COVID inflation in the Biden era, Trump is overseeing the worst start for America's largest companies since the Depression era. The footage I showed you again. The footage comparison is based on the math. I can tell you another article now notes that the top 500 companies' performance since Trump inauguration is the worst also for any president since 1928. That was right before the Great Depression. Down over 12 points in that index, which is trillions of dollars. And numbers don't lie. The numbers are bad, even after Trump retreated on part of his tariffs. Now Trump's aides are trying to calm the markets or add hope by repeating a talking point that the tariff war Trump started will come to an end because it's not sustainable. which is something Trump's Treasury Secretary has been saying and reportedly leaning into again today in this headline that you see, a key private huddle with investors, where he says these China tariffs are unsustainable. They can't be sustained by both sides. Okay. That is a vague statement, but it's just economic speak for saying this will end. Trump's whole big trade war will end because it's not sustainable. It's designed to try to bring things back from the brink. Now, these markets, of course, are made of people who make up their minds. Those people have been leaning into that hope today, and you can see it actually in these headlines. This is supposed to be a numbers game, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, but the theme from that Trump aide Bessent is that hope for a China trade deal, hope that they'll back off doing what Trump's been doing. So hope that he'll stop is a negative review for the trade war. They're hoping it ends. They're hoping these Trump policies eventually evaporate because they're not sustainable. But putting that much on hope is also a hint of how desperate things are on Wall Street. People whose careers turn on numbers and computer screens and making deals for an eighth of a point are now, I guess, just fingers crossed, hoping that the politician they cheered on for claimed economic reasons, that he'll kind of go away, at least as far as trade and tariff policy is concerned. Now, I bet you feel, if you follow the news like we do, that we are a long ways from last year's campaign. So a little memory about the shift here, because back then it was Trump and a lot of Wall Street leaders claiming they were on the same page about the market benefits of Trump winning.
It'll also bring your grocery bill way down.
President Trump will do nothing that interferes with the success of the country, the success of the economy.
Nothing to interfere with the success. How's that aging? Poorly. The numbers don't lie. Facing terrible numbers, the Trump bankers are now talking up hope. Those are the new headlines today, which is pretty striking when you think about the track record of that particular word hope in our recent political lexicon. You might remember Obama's hope, which was offered as kind of the idea of a fresh start for more unified politics in our country, immortalized in this hope poster, which is a far cry from what we're hearing on Wall Street today. Again, I'm quoting those finance headlines about hope. Hope not so much for anything positive or affirmative, but just a hope that President Trump will take that tariff chart and go away so the traders can trade again, so the bankers can bank again. Hope for an end to a self-induced fiasco. And by the way, with full awareness for everyone following this and everyone on Wall Street, that there's no magic foreign concessions, no actual deals in the 9 days since Trump's top trade advisor, who's hawkish on all this, who supports the trade war, had been vowing deals.
We've got 90 deals in 90 days possibly pending here. And it was par for the course. Actually, it was a birdie for President Trump to do exactly what he did, which was pause for 90 days. And we're going to get this done for the American people.
No trade deals, despite the promises. And that's another number that doesn't lie. 0 deals to show for the chaos and the trillions lost and the public proclamations of so many, even if it was quite clearly at the time trying to save face for Donald Trump, that there was some benefit from all of these trillions lost, that there were deals coming. Forget 90, how about 1? Global economics experts view all of this as more than a bad month. We're being told the global economic system of the past 80 years is being reset, according to a chief economist at the IMF, managing the, quote, major negative shock from Trump's chosen tariffs, policies that he chose. We didn't have to go down this road. Now, there's also a lag time between any general trade policy and what stocks do, and then the wider real economy that we all live in. And whenever we've seen big crashes in the past, or even when banks topple, what starts inside one company or on the trading floor can take weeks or months to ripple out across the country or the world. And that depends on a lot of factors. I'm not going to list all of them in tonight's opening report here, but I want to tell you some very concrete new warning signs, which anybody can understand and which people are living through, that go beyond anyone invested in or following the stock market. Consumer confidence is plunging. Americans say their own finances are getting worse. It's actually, as you see, the lowest number in about 24 years per Gallup. Pollsters often find people's views of their own finances and households are actually more telling because it's less of a general mood about the country where politics and other things come in and more about asking you honestly whether you're racking up more debt or having to skip certain purchases because you know you've got a budget problem. And we have other mainstream accounts here just dealing with real facts in the real economy that show people are already cutting back on the things that you can skip out on first. As an example, that includes drinks, going out, beauty visits, what they call discretionary spending, because it's not part of your rent budget or something that you kind of have to hit. And the reports are the economic warning signs are flashing, for example, at the salon, where people cut back first instead of, for example, getting their hair cut as often. Reuters reporting beauty products, drink purchases sagging. Again, that's something you can skip out on. And the White House cannot just spin people out of their own lived reality and tell them up is down when it comes to your own pocketbook, your own savings, or whether you work at one of these companies that just took $1 trillion haircut and might have to cut some jobs. We're also seeing those public protests around the country that are rallying opposition to the economy, which hits people so much clearly in their pocketbook, as well as the other issues, due process, emergency powers, the things we've been covering. There's been no consistent counter message on these economic problems by Trump. Have you noticed that? He's, of course, known for his rhetoric, the catchy nicknames he gives out, his approach to PR. But knowing PR also means knowing when not to do PR about certain things, not to do more public relations, say, about tariffs. So in a sign, we're seeing that the White House actually knows this economic drop is a messaging brick wall, is how they're trying to change the subject. Aides hammering home messaging about deportations, immigration, Greenland, any issue that could distract from an economy left quaking by Trump's trade war, The Atlantic reports. And this is a White House that runs a very obvious revolving door for hiring and political advocacy with Fox News, some of their hosts, some of their contributors. And no surprise, because they're in sync, the Fox network is taking that same approach. Several independent outlets that monitored Fox during the worst parts of this market crash, when it was undeniably big news, found that the network was saying all was calm on the airwaves. So while financial outlets from TV to print covered what became a 9% plus drop in the markets over just 2 days, over on Fox, the New York Times reports there was actually no on-screen stock ticker, making Fox News an outlier among the major cable networks with a conspicuous calm about the worst stock market sell-off since the pandemic. Its website featuring few headlines about the poor market performance. So what you see on Fox there reinforces what the White House wants, which is just hoping people won't get into this. Don't debate it, just try to change the subject. Pretend it's not happening, but weeks later, it's still happening. So Fox can say all is calm and there's nothing to see. Don't even look at that stock ticker. Get it off the screen, even on those worst sell-off days. And if others veer off script on Fox airwaves, we can tell you briefly what it sounds like because they end up freestyling some pretty odd arguments. There's a business commentator, Grant Cardone, who basically pitched a pretty disempowering defense of the Trump economic slump. Remind you, he's talking to viewers and Americans about their own money, whether it's in retirement accounts or wherever. And he told the people, quote, the people at home, just step aside, stay out of the game. I guess the game of even their own lifelong retirement savings, because he tried to explain the only person in charge was Trump in the game.
You guys that are at home and you're worried about your 401k, your IRA, or you traders out there or bankers that are worried about your commissions, just step aside. This is not the time for Monday, quarterbacking. You're not in the game. President Donald Trump is.
You're not in the game, even for your own savings. It's not a very empowering view. It's not free market. It's not traditionally conservative. But the idea that Trump is the quarterback is the big pitch. But in a situation where MAGA thought they were getting an MVP quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who was going to quarterback this economy, they have found out from the math, from the Great Depression monthly comparison, from the data I showed you all through this report, that Trump is actually quarterbacking more like Ryan Leaf. If you don't remember him, that's because he was considered one of the all-time quarterback busts. But with all apologies to televised comparisons, it's not a football game. And if it were, the problem for the American economy is everyone is their own quarterback. We've been through enough boom and bust cycles and cruel capitalism and unfair inflation to know that. We've been all the way back to it's the economy, stupid. Everybody knows you at the end of the day are the quarterback of your pocketbook, your rent, your savings if you have some, your investments if you have some of those, or retirement investments. And you definitely can't count on this government and this Trump administration to be looking out for you. Not according to the last few weeks, not according to the slump since he took office, and not really according to his own, I guess, defenders who want you to just sit out the game while he continues a game of chicken with China that has cost this economy $6 trillion and counting. We're going to fit in a quick break and be back with a real economic quarterback in 90 seconds. Punishing market problems continue, volatility, and the Wall Street Journal noting we are in a month that could rival the Great Depression era for the worst April in modern American economic history, largely driven by Trump's tariffs as the markets hope, that's the big word in the headlines today, hope that Trump will just continue to back down. We turn to Justin Wolfers, who's a professor of economics at the University of Michigan, host of Think Like an Economist podcast. Welcome. I just laid out how anytime you run the Food Line footage from the Depression, it feels stark. And yet the Wall Street Journal, the math here isn't saying we have to end up there, but it is saying that the tariffs that Trump insists on are dragging us down in ways that are avoidable and risky. Can you explain that to us in English today?
Absolutely. Ari, I was just going to say, you look a bit miserable today, and it's hard to be an economist and be the bloke who cheers you up. But, you know, what's happening right now is the economy's being hit by a bunch of shocks, all of them emanating from the White House. So the first thing is the tariff shock. The tariff shock means that a bunch of the inputs that American manufacturers need in order to produce stuff just got more expensive. It means that our supply chains, which are intricately linked with those in China, when you have tariffs of 145%, that's basically putting up a wall and saying, don't bother. And it's saying, let's reorganize the economy all at once, just right now, real quick before the ship comes in. We tried that during COVID and we learned how painful that was. So there's the tariff shock. And the other thing that's going on is a massive uncertainty shock. No one knows what America's economic policies will be tomorrow or even next week. And so that uncertainty then means that almost anyone, whether you're a family at home, you might want to save a little bit for a rainy day. If you're a CEO and you're thinking about breaking ground on a new project, you're probably thinking, why don't I just wait a little bit and see how all this stuff is going to shake out? And so that's going to really cut into spending over the next few months. And then you've got, related to the uncertainty, the sheer unpredictability, the severing of global ties, the reorganizing of the global order.
Let me stop you on your prior point, as you might say, your penultimate point, but I don't talk like that. Before we get to global, you're talking about what we showed, people cutting back on going out for drinks, going to the salon, doing the things that if you're doing okay, you can do them, but you know you don't have to. How do economists track that? Because on first blush, you'd say, well, what does a China tariff have to do with me going to the bar? And yet, in a lot of cities, the bar is a lot more expensive than having a sixer at home.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when you go to the bar, the beer comes out of a keg. The keg's made of aluminium. Aluminium has a 25% tariff on it right now.
Boom.
So in every way, just go down the supermarket aisle. Pick up the goods, look where they're made. Even when they say made in America, realize bread that's made in America might be made with wheat from some other country. Our
and I'm not being didactic. You could go, correct me if I'm wrong, and get a largely American beer and still be using the foreign supply chain is what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we are profoundly integrated, and there's very little stuff we can actually make without somehow relying on the rest of the world. So where we are with the economy right now is when you ask people how they feel, the answer is miserable. So the fact that the White House is implementing a destructive economic agenda is something that the American people are awake to, they understand, and they're angry about. So consumer confidence is down, business confidence is down, people expect higher unemployment, higher inflation, and they're angry. But we haven't yet seen it in the hard economic data. Yeah. We can tell stories. We could call my hairdresser who says, well, I haven't seen Justin come by lately. And she's right. It could be the economy. Or
well, I don't want to get too personal, Justin, but you do wear your hair somewhat long, so I don't know how often you're getting a cut, if we're just going to get into it.
Yeah, are we going to talk shaving as well while we're here, Ari?
Wow. Well,
so
then I'd be on my back foot.
Hasn't seen you in a little bit. And so...
All right, let me show you one more thing. Sometimes the way it comes through in the culture is a bottom line. And you and I, to some degree, and many of the market watchers are dealing with all this global data. SNL had a great spoof with John Hamm, though, about the fact that a lot of the other the sort of down market impact is affecting everyone, and it's measured quite differently than the mumbo jumbo data. Take a look.
Well, markets are in turmoil right now. Let's check on the S&P 500, which is down 2.38%. The NASDAQ Composite is down 265 points, and Dow Industrials are down 2.88%. Okay, does that mean anything to anyone?
Let's take a look at Boxed Mac and Cheese, which is up 4.5% to $1.59.
Whoa, even across the street?
Even across the street, Kenneth. Also, Big Box of Bisquick is up from $2.39 to too damn much.
Justin, I think it's fair. That's how people interpret it. But that is also part of this Trump problem, right?
It is, but I've been struck by how much, because the changes he's making are so far-reaching, I've been really impressed by how much the American people understand it. So next time you walk into a toy store, just ask them, hey, what are you guys doing about tariffs? And despite the fact that this is someone who's more obsessed with board games and kids' toys, they'll probably say, I'm really worried. I haven't been placing an order lately. I don't know where things are going to shake out. I've talked to executives across workplaces across America. All they're doing all day, every day is they write a new business plan for today's tariffs. Then those tariffs get thrown out and they have to write a new business plan tomorrow. Every manager across the country is thinking about one thing and one thing only, which is how best to try and survive amidst the economic chaos that's coming out of Washington.
Yeah. Economist Justin Wolfers on many topics, including hair care. Good to see you. We'll have you back in these tough times out there for the real economy. Thank you. We have an update on that big story involving the Pentagon, and Admiral William McRaven, an Obama veteran, is here. But first, the constitutional crisis. Some say it's already here. Others say there are things we can learn from other countries that have gone from one type of government into total repression. We have a Nobel Prize winner on that next. Trump has been testing an expansion of executive power, often through immigration, and he keeps losing in court. A Colorado federal judge ruling Venezuelan migrants detained there can't be transferred and must get several weeks' notice before this effort to continue to use war powers to deport people. Trump's DOJ stands accused of basically hiding information about that big controversy over the mistaken deportee. The lower court judge has been slamming the administration's willful and bad faith refusal to comply with discovery obligations. The ACLU says the government's also not complying with the Supreme Court order we've been covering to provide detainees with an opportunity to challenge deportations. The solution they want is basically more binding, tough enforcement. Two migrants also are filing that they got deportation orders after the Supreme Court said they should be halted. That could be an oversight. Sometimes that happens, or it could be basically a willful violation of a Supreme Court order. So the theme is the Trump administration testing and pushing to see how far it can go, how much it can get away with. And the due process issues are major, especially because Politico reports there is a vivid cautionary tale here, both legally and politically, if the wider public sees this as the government, the federal government under Trump, abusing power to take away people's rights, something that has long been a fear on the right, as well as just how the Constitution works and saying the government can't disappear people. Other experts say the constitutional crisis is here now.
The constitutional crisis that I kept on thinking naively we would not get to is here. The emergency is here. The crisis is now. It's not 6 months away. It's not another Supreme Court ruling from happening. It is happening now.
The administration said, we're just not going to bring him back. Well, that is the very essence of a constitutional crisis.
Do you think that the country is currently in a constitutional crisis?
Oh, yes, we are. This is the emergency. Like it or not, it's here.
It's here. It's the emergency. Supreme Court orders being all but flouted, or, according to some, flouted. And don't sugarcoat it, because that will become part of the problem. If we are there, what do we learn from? Because we're certainly not the first country to face this kind of slide away from democracy. Well, there's a renowned journalist, Maria Ressa, who's actually spent her career as a journalist and then ultimately as a kind of defendant dissident, reporting on the Philippine President Duterte's regime. She faced the retaliation that has still been darkly warned but not quite happened against American journalists. She was prosecuted for something they called cyber libel. She has also won in most of the legal skirmishes against her. Her commitment on these issues earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 2021. We're not just talking activism or journalism or speaking truth to power in the abstract. We're talking about someone who fought, risked everything, and according to many, won. She's my special guest next.
My arrest doesn't hurt me because it only makes me more resolute, because I see firsthand how the law is bent to the point that it is broken. What we're seeing is death by 1,000 cuts of our democracy. We will not duck. We will not hide. We will hold the line.
A journalist who risked everything in the name of democracy, Maria Ressa, is a Nobel Peace Prize winning journalist, the author of the aptly titled How to Stand Up to a Dictator. Thank you for being here and for your work.
Thank you for having me.
Americans are learning a bit more about this. Recent history, global history.
Yeah.
Let's just start with you, and you've been courageous and also been willing to talk about your story. You faced a repressive leader who posted online on social media, oh, they should arrest you, and made it a hashtag, and it's trending. And initially, you say people didn't know how seriously to take that. 2 years later, you were arrested by that government for what many would call journalism.
Yeah. I think this is what Americans, most people on social media don't get. This is a behavior modification system. In that one, they trended hashtag arrest Maria Ressa in 2017. Mm-hmm. Right? And when that comes, I was getting an average of 90 hate messages per hour. So this isn't just fertilizer getting ready for the arrest 2 years later. It was also a way to tear down credibility. You're seeing all of these things happening now here in the United States. And then when I was arrested, I was in shock, but it was a wake-up call. But simultaneously, it almost feels like people thought, well, maybe. And that's the seed of the doubt that you need to actually fight.
We have a sitting president who is term limited. There is no constitutional legal way for any president to serve a third term. With everything going on, and he's got his hands full with his own trade war, he says publicly he wants a third term. He's not joking. He will hold on to power, he says, past 2029. And a lot of elites in this society, some people are just busy trying to make a living, as I point out, but a lot of elites and others say, he's just saying that. It's a negotiating position. Is there a risk in not taking a repressive leader seriously when they tell you they're being serious?
I don't know how much more evidence you want in terms of vindictiveness and action, right? If you don't take it seriously, when you're facing an instance like today, you wind up losing your rights every step of the way. The way democracy shifts is it doesn't happen all in one chunk. There isn't a red line where, is it democracy? Is it not democracy? You just get weaker over time. And if you don't act while you're still strong enough to protect your rights, then you've voluntarily given up your rights. And these are all stages. And look at what The Philippines is America's former colony. You know, I joke all the time to say we spent 300 years in a convent and 50 years in Hollywood. We have a constitution like the United States, 3 co-equal branches of government. The exact same thing happened with Rodrigo Duterte that is happening here. Very strong executive. Legislature that he essentially, the 3 C's, he co-opted this. Corrupt, coerce, co-opt. And because there was no check and balance, then he also was able to consolidate the judiciary. This is why I had 10 criminal charges against me in a little over a year. But then what happened was that the rights that were violated during that time period, first rule of law goes, right? So media attacks first, media capture, from social media to media capture, to academic capture, to NGO capture, to state capture. Duterte crushed our institutions within 6 months of taking office, and the United States, this administration is moving faster.
Faster than Duterte, in your view?
Faster than he thought.
What is the lesson in the pushback? Because at some point, things got so extreme that how did you start to win?
Communities, people who were afraid. So the difference between the United States and the Philippines is that we had a brutal drug war that human rights groups said killed, by December 2018, 27,000 people. The police admitted to 7,000 people, but regardless of the number, right? So there was this, the fear was violence, which, you know, I worry again about America. But beyond that, here, the fear seems to be money. The fear seems to be us against them.
But was there a turning point? You're facing these charges on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you're internationally recognized, and that regime ultimately crumbles.
Actually, no. I feel, you know, until today, I have 2 criminal charges left, and I have to ask the Philippine Supreme Court for approval to travel. When you lose your rights, it doesn't come back to you automatically. You think the people who have lost their jobs will automatically go right back. That's not going to happen. Our largest broadcaster in the Philippines lost its franchise. It's like a license to operate here. Precisely because Duterte said so. There was a legislative vote. They lost it. They've never regained it. Little Rappler stood up. We thought we would, and you don't know what will happen when you're standing up, right? I could have gone to jail cumulatively. The 10 charges carried more than 100 years in jail. I still have that pending over me. But what's the turning point, right? You asked this. It was the end of his term in office. If he had gotten the military and the police to back him, he would have stayed on. But that didn't happen. We had elections, and today I'm here with court approval, but Duterte was arrested last month, charges of crimes against humanity, and now he's at The Hague facing trial.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is, one, you act fast, you don't wait, you take things seriously, you don't close your eyes. And then third, in that situation, you had civil society within the country and an international community that had a backstop. We have some of that, but not all of that. I have to fit in a break. I'd love to have you back. I guess we'll need court approval, which is a reminder of the situation. Maria Ressa, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your work. We're going to fit in a quick break, and then the crisis at the Pentagon when we return. We are approaching the ceremonial first 100 days of this new presidential term, and we have seen more than the usual share of crises in that time period. There are mistakes, there are incompetence examples that have been widely reported. There's been the fallout over tariffs, and then the life and death risk of sharing classified war plans, for example, with a journalist, or halting food aid around the world. Some of the cuts that the Trump-Musk program has instituted have quickly been reversed and said, basically, we were told they were mistakes within days. New York Times reports that Trump's leadership has caused Americans to question our role in the world stage and upended many notions about where we stand as a global leader. With an eye on that and how you should approach any crisis, local or international, we are joined by retired Admiral William McRaven. 4-star admiral, served as U.S. Special Operations Command under President Obama, oversaw a special ops raid that killed Osama bin Laden in 2011. You can see then younger President Obama greeting him days after the raid. His new book is called Conquering Crisis, 10 Lessons to Learn Before You Need Them. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, good to be here.
We'll get to the news. We'll start with the book.
Okay.
For someone who's not super military, reading this will teach them what about crisis?
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is that this book is designed for people not in the military, whether you're a CEO or whether you're having a kind of a personal crisis. The book's going to give you a kind of a framework to deal with that. And, you know, what I tell folks right up front is, look, it's the second law of thermodynamics, which I laugh with my students at UT. And I said, the second law of thermodynamics in civilian terms is basically things are going to deteriorate if you don't do anything about them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing you have to do in a crisis is you have to confront it head on. You've got to kind of find out where the biggest threat is, and you have to put the most amount of resources against that threat. Now, again, whether it's a personal crisis or whether you're the CEO, recognize where the threat is and address it head on. Be honest, talk truth to the rank and file, talk truth to the public. And if you do that, you're going to find yourself getting out of the crisis a lot quicker.
So you say head on.
Yep.
We've covered you, so we know a little bit about you at work. And I've gotten to talk to you a few times. You strike me as very even-keeled, almost like it would be, I don't know, hard to scare you. Like you're just here, you know, like you're like granite in a suit.
Yeah,
but a lot
that's
of
not me.
No, well, a lot of people, myself included, we feel when you hit the crisis, we feel scared, emotion, overwhelmed, and that almost can become a blockage or a choke point to the then things you're advising. So, what about that very first step that someone actually feels emotionally overwhelmed? Then what do you do?
Yeah, the first thing you have to do if you're in a leadership position is you got to do your job, and your job is when you're in a crisis and you've been punched in the gut. You better walk in front of your employees, the rank and file, whoever it is. You better have your shoulders back. You better have your head up. You better have your eyes straight. You better show them that you're confident that you're going to get through this crisis. Because if you don't, if you come in with your shoulders slumped and you look like you're not going to get through it, it will spread like wildfire. So the first thing you got to tell leaders to do is, look, do your job. Lead through the crisis. And sometimes you got to fake it till you can make it. But again, if you walk in front of the employees and it looks like you don't have a clue on how you're going to get out of this, then that crisis is going to go longer and longer. And I'll get back to being honest and upfront. You have to tell your employees what the problems are. You got to be truthful about it. If it was your responsibility, you better take accountability for it, but have a plan for getting out of it.
When you look at the bin Laden raid, it is one that is a high watermark of success that comes from a president and a planning process willing to do it when there's risk, all the way down through your leadership and then the brave people who carried it out. We have classic Obama talking about you in that raid. Let's take a look.
We ran a tight process because the stakes were so high. But after all the work we did, all the process that we went through, the one thing I've always emphasized was that there remained enormous uncertainty.
That you have to go in knowing how bad it could get, not just hoping for the best.
Right.
The policy planning process at the Pentagon and under the Trump administration doesn't necessarily meet that test, according to a lot of observers. I'm going to show you Defense Secretary Hegseth has now basically been what we would say is caught or exposed, sharing these sensitive attack plans in more than one private chat through this Signal app, sharing it with his family, which is unauthorized apparently. Quote, Hegseth used his personal phone to send sensitive information, transfer the information from apparently the secure government phone to the unsecured personal device. Military experts and others in your position with your experience, not just concerned about the whether he stays on the job, but whether we're at risk.
It looks to me as if this is an amateur juvenile, look at the cool secrets I've got, sort of a bro messaging system.
The bosses need to do what they tell their subordinates to do.
I'm going to be very careful with what I pass my boss because I don't trust them anymore to keep these kind of secrets until he shows that kind of trust.
He's not serious in his purpose.
In terms of the morale in the Pentagon, they don't know who to trust anymore.
A very negative effect on their ability to do their jobs and their ability to protect the United States.
Is it good national security protocol and policy for the secretary to be doing this? Should he stop doing it? And at what point are there real concerns about his ability to lead?
Yeah, of course, it's not appropriate protocol. I think everybody understands that. But what I would advise the secretary on, and let me start by saying, look, I want the secretary to be successful. Every American should want the Secretary of Defense and the president to be successful. But if he's going to be successful, he needs to surround himself with people that can advise him and aren't afraid to speak truth to power. The problem is a lot of the people he has surrounded himself with are a little bit of acolytes and they're yes men, and that's not going to serve you well.
You think Secretary Hegseth has surrounded himself so far with yes men?
I think so. Now, the good news is General Dan Kane, who is coming in as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I know Dan, he is a tremendous officer. Now, frankly, I liked CQ Brown. CQ Brown was a great officer as well. But Dan Kane will not be afraid to provide the Secretary of Defense his best military advice. And I would encourage the Secretary to listen to the uniformed military, to listen to the DOD civilians that have been there for a while. Because I can tell you, on that thread, on that Signal app thread, there was not a single uniformed member. Had there been, I guarantee you, they would have said, Mr. Secretary, this is an inappropriate venue to be talking about attack plans. So having a uniformed military person somewhere within his close ranks will serve him well. And again, I wish the best for him.
Yeah. Really interesting to get you on all this, Admiral McRaven. And the book, again, is Conquering Crisis, 10 Lessons to Learn Before You Need Them. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
You can always find us on social media. I'll remind you that's at Ari Melber on basically any of the platforms you see there. And that does it for us. Alicia Menendez is up next.